Hello and welcome to your Access Point to Washington. I'm Aisha Tanzim. Major political parties in Pakistan, along with some tribal elders, are willing to negotiate peace with the Pakistani Taliban. A joint communique at the end of an all-parties conference Thursday announced the formation of a grand jirga to hold the talks. Is peace with the Pakistani Taliban possible? We'll discuss in detail with our guests. Raza Jan, who's with me in the studio, is an analyst and the Pakistan team leader for the Critical Threats Project at the American Enterprise Institute. And then we have Stephen Tankel. He's a professor at American University and a non-resident scholar at the South Asia program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. His research focuses on insurgency, terrorism, and the evolution of non-state armed groups, which is partly what we're going to talk about today. So, gentlemen, welcome to the show. I'll start with you, Raza. My first question to you is, we recently had an all-parties conference under ANP. Now there's another all-parties conference. How were they different? What didn't happen before that has happened now?
To be honest, I don't think they're going to. They are that different, and that they're going to be that different. It is election season. Everyone's trying to, get their punches in, get their election stunts in. I think this is frankly one more of them. The last conference, everyone declared that they are for negotiating with the Taliban, but predictably they said that the talks can only progress under the ambit of the state, and with the Taliban coming forward and accepting the basic, the constitution of Pakistan. These are preconditions that are antithetical to the Taliban. They have rejected these out of hand in the past. So we keep coming up against the desire to talk and statements in favor of talks, but with nagging preconditions that mean that they're not really going to advance any further. I saw that in the last conference. I see that in this conference. I expect to continue to hear people say, we want to talk, we want to find a negotiated settlement, and I don't see the pathway forward despite the statements.
And now, Stephen, do you agree that this is just an election tactic? And just to add an interesting tidbit in there, PTI, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, the party that has been calling for talks from the beginning, has not and did not attend this conference. And in the Pakistani media, I heard them say their statements that they think it's an election stunt. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'd certainly agree that there's election politics going on. I'm in agreement with Reza on that. And I would add, I mean, this has been building for some time. I mean, the ANP in particular has suffered greatly. And so in addition to the electioneering that may be going on, there also may be on the part of some, a true desire to find some way to try to stem the violence. Unfortunately, I'm also in agreement with Reza that given the preconditions that exist, it's very unlikely that these talks will prove fruitful. Commonly in a situation like this, when there's a stalemate, which is essentially what we have, which is to say, the TTP is not losing, but can't necessarily progress that much further, and the state cannot beat them back unless one side is prepared to give ground, and there's no reason to suggest that either side would be prepared to give major ground right now. These would be talks for talk's sake, but they wouldn't necessarily go anywhere.
Now, Reza, what I want to ask you is that the last time when there was violence against ANP, Awami National Party, and one of their leaders was killed, they wanted to talk action. They said it's time we all get together, the nation gets together, and we take strong action against these players. And then they held the all-parties conference. So how did they go from action to talks?
I mean, I think that at that point in time, it's a moment of crisis for the party, and they're trying to figure out a way out of it. And I'm sure there's disagreement within the party about how to go about that. Some people say, this is the time for revenge. We've got to use this as a rallying cry to gather the forces and go against the TTP in a strong way. And then there are people who say, this is another example, enough of the violence, enough of the killing, we need to draw it back. So I'm sure that the dissonance in their voices partially resulted from the fact that they were probably still coming to grips with what was a very traumatic event, the death of Mr. Balor, his assassination at the hands of the TTP. And that's where the dissonance came from. Eventually they came down, it seems, on the side of having an all-parties conference looking for talks. But even there you saw how those talks were punctuated by conditions that means that talks couldn't really advance in any sort of meaningful way. And frankly, I don't see why any of these parties should expect the talks to advance. The Taliban has certainly not exhibited any of the conditions of a group that is, that has a serious desire to talk, talks will usually, they're trying to negotiate from a point of strength. They're not trying to negotiate from a point of parity or a point of weakness over here. They're conducting more attacks than they have, in this period ever since about November of 2012. They've gone on a major surge. They've managed to clearly rebuild their attack networks. They've been conducting high casualty violence across the country.
Hold this thought that they're negotiating from a position of strength. Let me bring Stephen in. Stephen, this whole idea that Taliban are on a surge and they're attacking more and they've rebuilt the idea, why did they then float this idea of possible talks? Because the initiative came recently from them.
Yeah, I mean, there's the same way that Reza was discussing there, that there's probably disagreement within the ANP. I think we should not, first of all, view the TTP as an entirely uniform entity. That said, in the past, they have shown, a willingness to talk at various points to engage in peace deals as an opportunity to buy time. And beyond, this idea of floating a willingness to talk, I think, to Reza's point, it's important to look at the conditions under which the TTP would not just come to the table, but also what they're looking for. Are they prepared to accept the Pakistani constitution as it exists now? That doesn't seem to be the case. Are they looking to, carve out their own fiefdom in the tribal areas? Yeah, they do seem to continue to be interested in that. These are issues that are going to be non-starters at the negotiating table. And given the degree to which they are surging right now, it's really questionable whether they've been weakened to the point that talks will do anything other than potentially create space for further expansion. So unfortunately, I think to echo and perhaps to extend what Reza was saying, my sense is that ultimately the Pakistani state is going to have to engage in another military effort to weaken the TTP before talks would prove fruitful.
Can take place.
To dovetail off of his previous point about the Taliban being in a position of strength and negotiating from there, we also have to remember that they're very aware of the timetables and the timelines that are existing in the Pakistani political sphere. Elections are coming up. They know very well that the government and the political parties are afraid of the Taliban disrupting and causing major violence around the time of the elections, which is why they're going on the front foot in order to try and get concessions out of the Pakistani state that are beneficial to them. They're offering talks, but I don't think they're interested in offering concessions at this point.
So basically what you're suggesting is that right now the Taliban are offering talks so that the Pakistani government will give them some concessions. What kind of concessions would they be looking for at this point?
I'm not sure, because the talks have not progressed to the point of, actually negotiating down what something final would look like. But, I mean, as far as the preconditions from the Taliban have come, we've seen them to be maximalist in their nature. So everything from, turning Pakistan into a state that is Sharia compliant, but their vision of Sharia, breaking off all relations with the United States, their goals, it's basically towards achieving their goals of toppling what they see as an apostate government in Pakistan. And I'm sure it would involve, some sort of, guarantees against military operations in the frontier, trying to get the Pakistani government to stop drone strikes by the United States and such things. But in the end, these are also rhetorical points. It's a way for them to weaken the government by offering the talks, by looking like they're the ones who are interested in talking, but it's the government who's really not, the compliant partner. It's a way of blemishing the government in the eyes of the people.
In the eyes of the people. But Stephen, what I want to ask you is, what about America in Afghanistan? The argument that I hear most often in Pakistan is, well, Afghan Taliban haven't surrendered. They are not. They haven't agreed to the Afghan constitution, but America is willing to talk to them.
Yes, though I would be careful from drawing too distinct an analogy. The U.S. is going to be drawing down from a foreign country. And is seeking some sort of a political settlement in the course of doing so. That is a distinctly different ballgame than Pakistan faces, where it is facing an internal insurgency. And so settlement there is a very different outcome. And I would add to that, off of Reza's point, that to the degree that the Taliban is willing to float this now in Pakistan, in addition to blemishing the government, this is also an opportunity to sow disunity within the Pakistani government and make it harder for them to collectively move forward against the TTP.
Now, I want to focus a little more on this point of U.S. talks with Afghanistan. But before we do that, we've had a lot of Facebook comments on this issue. Let's read some of them. The first comment came on Twitter. It's against talks. The comment is from Tausif, which says, there cannot be peace with anyone who's willing to use violence, but there must be talks to bring them around to leave weapons. Then we had some Facebook comments. Let's read a couple of those. Naseem Shirazi against talks, saying peace is impossible, but dialogue is important to know their agenda. They took responsibility for shooting Malala Yousafzai. Again, another one, Syed Hassan Jahangir says, I think they're blackmailing the entire nation, and I would say if they get any agreement with Taliban, it won't stay long. No matter what Pakistani government does for them, they will keep blackmailing the Pakistani nation. So those are some of the Facebook comments. We'll read more of them as we progress. But Reza, coming back to the idea of America talking to Taliban in Afghanistan, Steve pointed out that America is a foreign nation there and will draw out. But when this whole saga started, America was not willing to talk to Taliban. That was one of the things. And Pakistan was pressured to take action and not talk to Taliban. And Pakistan, whether as a result of it or otherwise, has seen an increase in violence. And a lot of people in Pakistan, including political leaders from major parties, are saying, well, if you guys are talking to reach a political solution, why cannot we talk to reach a political solution?
I tend to agree. It's not quite, I wouldn't quite say it's apples and oranges, but they're not quite the same situation. In Afghanistan, it seems like the United States, is dealing with the practical realities of the fact that it is leaving, and it's trying to figure out what the situation, what the aftermath of their withdrawal is going to look like. Over there, they've also got local partners in the Afghan Taliban who are going to be living there in the same way that the Pakistanis aren't up and leaving from Pakistan anytime soon. It's the Afghan government that's in the end going to have to be one of the, the point players on negotiations with the Afghan Taliban, and it's trying to find a situation given the fact that the United States is withdrawing. In Pakistan, you need to, in order for talks to be possible, you need to have a willing partner on the other side. The Pakistani government is expressing a willingness for talks, but it doesn't show. It does not seem like the TTP has been a realistic partner.
Let me bring Steve in here. Steve, adding to Reza's point, willing partner. The Afghan government, has it found a willing partner already? Because okay, we can say that America is a foreign nation that's going to withdraw and leave the region, but Afghan government's there to stay. So how's their position different from the Pakistani government?
I mean, certainly they're much more synonymous. Of course, the Afghan government has been facing this insurgency for 10 years. And the Afghan Taliban, although, clearly not beaten, has been, by many accounts, worn down by, 10 plus years of fighting as well. So, and even within the Afghan Taliban, there is, by many accounts, significant divergence of opinion between those who say, okay, we need to be prepared to come to the table and make concessions, and others who, quite frankly, are less prepared and are sticking to a more maximalist agenda. On the Pakistani side of the border, there seems to be fewer indications of those who are prepared to make concessions. You seem to have a Pakistani Taliban that still seeks a maximalist agenda, and though although it floats the willingness to have discussions, the real question is towards what end. Now, if one wants to draw an analogy and say, well, the Afghans are talking, the Pakistanis, why shouldn't they speak as well? That's a fair enough analogy to draw. The question is, what is Pakistan as a state prepared to concede?
Okay.
If it is not prepared to concede, a Sharia state, along the lines of the TTP's interpretation, if it is not prepared to concede a fiefdom to the TTP in the tribal areas, if it is, not prepared to break with the United States, all of which, appear to be non-starters, then the question is, where will those talks go right now? Will they fructify? And I think the answer is no.
Okay, well, let's talk about what else is out there. But before we do that, we have some more Facebook comments, this time in favor of talks. Let's put some of them up on screen. Abdul Razak is saying everything is possible if the government does this honestly. Discussion is the solution of every problem. Abdul Basit Orakzai is saying, of course, Taliban is part of the Pakistan army, same brothers. And then Hassan Ahad is saying, yes, why not? They can be brought to the table and asked to stop this insanity in the name of the religion. If the Americans can do this on a foreign soil, why not us at home? And that's exactly the argument that we've been made. Now, we are joined right now by a very senior leader of Jamaat-e-Islami, Dr. Fareed Paracha, who's also the spokesperson of the party. Dr. Paracha, welcome to the show.
Okay.
Dr. Paracha, what we're talking about here is that we have guests here who say that the TTP, the Pakistani Taliban, are only offering talks so they can get time and they can rally and they can get concessions out of the Pakistani state. They are not really interested in peace with Pakistan.
There was an offer from them, and this offer is for the first time from them. They offered for a dialogue, and we think Jamaat-e-Islami, in our point of view, dialogue is the always last solution of the problem, and to get rid of the situation, it is necessary that there must be some dialogues. So there is an opportunity, there is a hope, and this is why we appreciate, but it is the duty of the government. It is not the political parties, it is not the religious parties, but it is the government who is authorized and who has to plan to have a dialogue with the TTP, and there may be some modalities between both parties.
Dr. Paracha, if the TTP does not agree with the constitution of Pakistan that your party Jamaat-e-Islami supports, if they do not agree to work within the constitution, would you still talk with them and make a deal with them?
Jamaat-e-Islami believe in the constitution of Pakistan. We believe in the democracy. We always entered in the elections and we always believe in the constitutional and legal ways. But as the matter of the Taliban is concerned, it is the ground realities, not it is the academic work. As the drone attacks are not according to the constitution and Constitution of Pakistan, and also not according to the will of the Supreme Court of the Pakistan. So as drone attacks are not admitting the Constitution of Pakistan and Parliament not admitting the Parliament of the Pakistan, that is why we open a debate about the Constitution.
And you make a very good point, Dr. Paracha. Please stay with us, and I'll put this point to our other guest, Stephen. What Dr. Paracha just said, and it made sense, is drone attacks are against the Constitution of Pakistan. They're against the order of the Supreme Court. The ground realities are different from what looks good on paper.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly difficult to disagree with the statement that drone attacks are look, they're imposed by a foreign power, and I don't think, at this point that anybody's debating that. There is significant disagreement about the degree to which drone attacks are tacitly sanctioned by the Pakistani security establishment and the Pakistan government. I personally,
So the idea is that if there are ground realities that are different from what should happen, what is happening is different, then why shouldn't the Pakistani state take whatever measures it can, given the ground realities, to have some kind of end to violence?
Well, I think, certainly, pursuing an end to violence is, it's hard to argue that the Pakistani state shouldn't be pursuing an end to violence. The question is, in what manner and how to achieve such that, the Pakistani constitution continues to be upheld that the Pakistani people have the type of state that they wanted is for them to determine, as a democracy that should be determined at the polls rather than, at the point of a gun. So again, this idea that there should be absolutely no dialogue or no discourse, I think that is somewhat of a straw man argument. Should the Pakistani state be seeking to peel off reconcilable elements and reintegrate them into society? Absolutely. Should be prepared to engage in a dialogue? Sure. But at the same time, one should be leery of ceding space where militants can further expand their writ. There were a series of peace deals from the mid-2000s onwards that enabled the TTP to grow in power, to grow in space, to solidify their gains on the ground. The Pakistani military has fought hard to take back a lot of that territory, and I think so. What I'm saying is simply, if the TTP is coming to the table with a maximalist agenda, the question is,
what is the starting point? I think that's what you're saying. What's the starting point? And Raza, you want to add?
Dr. Paracha's point of, peace at all costs, the ground realities is something that we have to take into account. Completely agree. But, I mean, there's something to be said for, being leery of the idea of peace at all costs. You can, you can do that, but like Stephen said, you would be ceding ground to the Pakistani Taliban. We saw this already in 2009 in Swat. The Pakistani government, this was not, the army negotiating. This was the Pakistani government, the Pakistani state legally, signing a peace deal that, gave into a number of conditions of the Pakistani Taliban in Swat. And we saw that soon after they had, the Pakistani state had ceded ground there, the Taliban not only broke the deal, they continued their military advance and their military attacks against the Pakistani state and their expansion into new territories.
Okay,
so they've shown an inability to, be satisfied with just the idea of a ceasefire and control of their local
limited
areas.
territory. Dr. Paracha, so the question then is, how do we know that this time they're talking about something other than the kind of deal they had in Swat? As the guest here said, the last time the Pakistani government made a deal with them, not only did they violate the agreement, they continued their attacks against Pakistan. And why shouldn't Pakistan take strong action against them rather than sitting with them at a table and talking?
There is a history of dialogues. And always the dialogues was, there was a peace-loving dialogues, but always damaged by the other parties. And we think that at this time, when U.S. and also NATO forces are seeking dialogue with the Taliban, and they are admitting the ground realities. So this is also our need. We have a damage of more than 60,000 innocent peoples during this war against terrorism. And General Pervez Musharraf entered in the war against terrorism.
So you're basically very strongly in favor of talks with the Taliban.
We are in the favor of the peace. We are in the favor of a peaceful country, Pakistan. We have faced too much damage during this
thousands of innocent deaths, as they say.
And I think that the drone attacks, there is not any international law behind these drone attacks. How one can allow the killing of innocent people in the name of collective or collateral damage? How one can, is there any rule of
So you're bringing drone attacks into it. We will talk about that too, Dr. Paracha. Thank you so much. I know your time is precious and you only had a few minutes to give us, but I thank you very much for giving us your time, and hopefully you'll join us again in future. For now, I'll say goodbye to you, but coming back to our guests in the studio, he brought drone attacks into it, although they're not directly linked. But wasn't there one time, Raza, when a peace deal was broken because there was a drone strike and a leader was killed? I think back in 2004, if I'm not wrong.
Back in 2004, I mean, if we're talking about the deal with Naik Mohammed, then, I mean, that was a different time, a whole different set of leaders. I think that was also early untested waters for the drone program in and of itself. So, I really can't speak to it. Obviously, if you've got, a deal forming with, if there was some sort of deal coming together between the Pakistani Taliban and the Pakistani government, then I'm sure the Pakistani government would also need to be in conversation with its partners in the United States and in the United States military and intelligence community to say this is what we're trying to go for, and try to come to some sort of a settlement or agreement on what can and what are and are not off the table as far as drone attacks are concerned. But I can't really speak to that because there was a very different set of conditions at a very different part in
and drone attacks are a whole Pandora's box in itself.
Really
We're not going to go there because we'll need another half an hour, if not an hour, to talk about that.
Or half a month.
Stephen, half a month. Well, we've been talking about it for how many years now, and nobody's solved it. So, Stephen, let's come back to you. When I apologize, US and NATO withdraws from Afghanistan, are we going to see a reduction of violence? Because a lot of people in Pakistan are saying we start talking to the Pakistani Taliban now. Afghanistan is going to be a different scenario in a year or two, and the Pakistani Taliban will be more focused at Afghanistan. They will not be interested in having violence in Pakistan.
That's one potential pathway. I think anybody who says that they know what's going to happen after U.S. and NATO forces draw down in 2014, I would be very skeptical of anybody who has any certainty about that. Well, one pathway is the potential that folks will be more interested on the Afghan side. Another is that a civil war situation could develop and violence could spill back over into Pakistan. You could have a status quo insurgency where some remain focused on Afghanistan and others carve out areas, which they've already done in Afghanistan, particularly in the Northeast, and use that to direct attacks back at Pakistan. Some could feel emboldened by the fact that the U.S. and NATO have withdrawn and ceased to take the fight more vigorously to the Pakistani state. There are any number of pathways that this could take.
We just don't know.
It's fair to say that after that withdrawal, that the militant milieu in Pakistan will become more atomized and in some ways more unpredictable. But it's unlikely that the revolutionary jihad that's being waged against Pakistan today will suddenly cease.
Okay, and we're coming towards the end, so I'll give you the last word, Raza. Sure. You have 1 minute to wrap it all up.
And on that point, let's not forget that the Pakistani Taliban, Hakim Ullah Masood, the leader of the group, who swears fealty to Mullah Omar, has not followed directives from the Afghan Taliban to switch focus towards Afghanistan in the past so many years. So why are we so certain that at the end of the war, when the United States is withdrawn and Afghanistan isn't, the Taliban have a measure of control, that there's no indication that at that point they will suddenly decide to start heeding directions to turn their focus to a war that's already on its way out.
Hasn't he, although announced that he's very loyal to Mullah Omar? And why
Absolutely.
is there this perception then, if you say that he's never listened to Mullah Omar, why is there a perception that the Pakistani Taliban will help the Afghan Taliban and there'll be less violence?
Well, they consider themselves to be under the same umbrella group. They swear fealty. It's an ideological factor there, but they've always maintained their autonomy. They've always operated as a separate group, and they've always maintained their own agenda. And they've never shown signs of straying from that agenda, even at the private urgings of Mullah Omar. And that's the danger of the Pakistan Taliban insurgency, is that in the end, they're all Taliban. They all have a common ideological core and common ideological values, but they seek to actualize it in very different ways. And for
And
the
the
TTP,
Pakistani
sadly, it's
Taliban.
one that is
It's in
antithetical
Pakistan
to the
and not in
Pakistani
Afghanistan.
state.
Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today, although it was a very interesting discussion. I'm sure we could have gone on for much longer, but before we leave, I want to thank our guest, Stephen Tankel, who's with the American University and Carnegie Endowment, and Reza Jan, who's right here in the studio with us. Reza, you're with the American Enterprise Institute. Before I leave, I want to remind you, go on Facebook, check out Access Point with AT. Leave your comments, leave your suggestions. Also go to our website, urduvoa.com. You can view the shows again. You can also read other news. And you can tweet us, look for us, Urdu VOA Live on Twitter, and also Tanzeem on Twitter if you want to follow me. Look forward to seeing you again next week. Goodbye.